So this class opener, I kept it nice and simple. Nothing complicated, nothing too crazy. Number one, the cube root of 27. What times itself 3 times will give you 27? The answer is 3, right? Because 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3 is 27. Let's move on to number 2. This is a square root, okay? Square root, right? There's no number here, so you automatically assume it's a square root. So what squared will give you 144? What times itself will give you 144? 12 is the answer to number 2. Let's move on to number 3. The cube root of 24. So what times itself 3 times will give you 24? 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So that did not give us 24. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. That did not give us 24 either. But we do know that 8 is a perfect cube number, just like 27 is a perfect cube number. Just like 64, right? 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. These are all perfect cube numbers, okay? And now, we have a cube root. We would like a perfect cube number in here, but it's not. 24 is not up here. So what I'm going to do is rewrite it with multiplication to get a perfect cube number. So I'm going to take the 24 and rewrite it as 8 times 3. And of course, we're going to split the root from there. So we're going to have the cube root of 8 and the cube root of 3. Now, the reason why I split it is because the cube root of 8, that's the nice, beautiful number 2. And the cube root of 3, you can't do it, so you just bring it down. And that's your final answer right there, 2 cube root of 3. Let's move on to number 4. 24. Well, not 24, but the square root of 24. So right here, we don't want perfect cube numbers. We want perfect square numbers in here. So 24 is not a perfect square number. Remember, what is a perfect square number? You're talking about 4, because 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. Those are perfect square numbers. And since we're taking the square root, we want one of these numbers in here. As you can see, 24 is not a perfect square number. So you want to rewrite it with multiplication to get what you want, which is a perfect square number. So 4 times 6 is 24. 9 times something won't work, 16 times something, so you're going to have to use the 4 times 6. Okay, so 4 is a perfect square number. I'm going to split the square root. That way, the square root of 4 gives us the nice number 2, and the square root of 6, so you just bring it down, you're done. Let's move on to some easier ones, like number 5. It says the square root of x to the 12th. Now remember, the square root is really the same thing as the power of 1/2. So I could take this square root right here and rewrite it as the power of 1/2. Now what do we have on the inside of the radical? We have x to the 12th, so I put x to the 12th in there. And we all should know from the section of exponents that a power to a power you multiply. So you really have 12 times half, which becomes 12 divided by 2, right? Half, multiplying by half is the same thing as dividing by 2. So we're really lucky that we have a number, an exponent right here that's divisible by 2. 12 times half, that ends up giving us 6. So the answer is x to the 6th, okay? Equals x to the 6th. Moving on to number 6. Right here, it's not a square root, it's a third root. And remember, a square root is the same thing as a power of 1/2. Right here, the third root is going to be the same thing as the power of 1/3. So let me do that. Let's put the power of 1/3 right here. And what's on the inside? X to the 12th. Now, again, from the section of exponents, power to a power you multiply. So it's really 12 times 1/3. You could do that on the calculator if you want, but it's multiplying by 1/3 is the same thing as dividing by 3. Same thing as multiplying by half is the same thing as dividing by 2. Right here, multiplying by 1/3 is the same thing as dividing by 3. So we are really lucky that this exponent is divisible by 3. So the final answer will be x to the 4th, because 12 divided by 3 is 4. Let's move on to number 7. Now right here we have a square root. Okay, once again, a square root, this square root right here is the same thing as the power of 1/2. But this is a 9, right? Remember, the power of 1/2, you're going to end up multiplying. It'd be nice if this were a number that's divisible by 2, because it's a square root. And this is not divisible by 2. So what I'm going to do is what I always do, rewrite with multiplication to get what I want. And there it is. I rewrote x to the 9th as x to the 8th times x. That's the same thing as x to the 9th, right? X to the 8th times x to the 1, put those together, it gives you 9. So now what I just did here, I had something that wasn't divisible by 2, and now I do have something divisible by 2. So again, I rewrote with multiplication to get what I wanted, something divisible by 2. So I'm going to split the root. I'm going to have the square root of x to the 8th. I'm going to have the square root of x. Now we know that this square root is the power of 1/2, which ends up dividing the 8 by 2. You could show your work if you want. If not, you could just say 8 divided by 2 is 4. So your final answer is x to the 4th, and no more radical, square root of x. Let's move on to the last one. This is the third root of x to the 7th. Now remember, the third root is really the same thing as the power of 1/3. Which means I would love if this number were 9, because that would be divisible by 3. But it's 7. It's not divisible by 3. So what I'm going to do is rewrite with multiplication. There's my cube root. And instead of x to the 7th, I want something divisible by 3. So that's going to be x to the 6th power times x. Because x to the 6th power times x, that's the same thing as x to the 7th. What I'm going to do now is split the root to each of those. The third root of x to the 6th, that is divisible by 3, so it's going to work out beautifully. And over here, the third root of x, you can't do that, you're just going to leave it on your answer. So the third root of x to the 6th, that is x to the 2nd, because 6 divided by 3 is 2. And the third root of x is going to stay the third root of x. So if you wanted to see the work for this, just remember the third root is the same thing as the power of 1/3. So you'd have x to the 6th on the inside, and then 6 times 1/3, that's really 6/3, it's really 6 divided by 3, which gives you the x squared. And that is your final answer, number 8.